We're all super excited today. I'm Tim Freeman. I'm one of the organizers at 1 Million Cups here in Little Rock. Is there anyone here that this is their first time? Great. Well, welcome. Spencer. Excellent. Great. Well, today we're going to do things a little bit differently. We normally have a presenter who gives a 6-minute presentation and then opens everything up for questions to the assembled crowd. Today we have a group, including 2 of our local organizers who just returned from New Orleans for New Orleans Entrepreneur Week. And we're going to do a panel with questions and answers. We're going to show a short video to kind of give you guys an insight into what New Orleans Entrepreneur Week was really all about and share some of our takeaways from that week, which we're still reeling from. It was phenomenal. So I'm going to welcome Spencer Jones from Line Guard Med. Well, I just want to welcome everybody up and then we'll play the video. Katie Milligan from Delta Regional Authority, Kim Lane, and our own the Venture Center's Steve Rice. Woo! Woo! We'll just pass mics around.
So we'll get out, we'll get out of the way for the video too.
Yeah.
All right, I'm starting the video.
Kick it.
Stand. I'll stand. I'll be the.
I'll stand. I don't want to
I'll stand. Okay.
You
To twist my arm.
You missed the best part. You turned away just as you had the little moment where you looked at the camera and stuck your tongue out. It was awesome.
Oh yeah, that was exciting. So
that little clip at the end there where you had the spinning logo, that's exactly how I still feel right now. That's what that week did to me. Is anybody here unfamiliar with New Orleans Entrepreneur Week? Is this your first time ever hearing about NOEW? Okay. So who's the best person going to give a little background context to, I think probably Katie.
Okay, good morning. Thank you guys for coming. So I work for Delta Regional Authority, which is a small federal agency focused on economic development in the Delta. We have 8 states, 252 counties and parishes. I'm sorry, this chair is really slick, so I'm trying not to fall out of it. 252 counties and parishes, just over 10 million people. And in 2015, we launched the Delta Entrepreneurship Network, which aims to identify entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship support organizations like the Venture Center that are providing free or reduced cost services for entrepreneurs. And through this competitive fellowship program, we actually provided entrepreneurs and ESOs, as we call them, an access point to NOEW. We have a 3-year partnership with the Idea Village, who produces NOEW. And prior to 2015, when we launched this fellowship, in order to pitch at New Orleans Entrepreneur Week, you actually had to be living in or moving to Orleans Parish or the surrounding parishes, so the greater New Orleans metro area. So what this fellowship does is provides an access point for those entrepreneurs and ESOs to get access and pitch. And you can attend the events no matter where you live, but outside of this fellowship, it's really, really difficult, borderline impossible to be able to pitch at NOEW. So this was their 8th year. They projected numbers are around 14,000 people attended throughout the week. And they actually have what's called the Big Idea, which is their premier event on Friday night that has, like I said, thousands of people. 10 companies are presented. So the way it works is that companies in New Orleans apply to be part of the Big Idea, and then you go on to NOLA.com and vote, and you can vote from anywhere, but really it's supposed to be the people of New Orleans or the Delta Entrepreneurship Network, because we had a semifinalist in it. And then they select those 10 companies to be featured on Fulton Alley, which is just on the other side of Convention Center Boulevard. And they shut down the street and they line it with these 10 entrepreneurs that are constantly pitching for about 3 hours. And then every person that walks in, every audience member gets a chip. And so they use those chips to vote for their favorites. And then the top 3 actually get to pitch for $25,000. And what we did was took that model and actually incorporated it into our Delta Entrepreneurship Network showcase. So it was a little smaller. We didn't have quite thousands of people, but we had all 19 of our entrepreneurs there to be featured. They got to engage with audience members, and I'll let Spencer talk about that a little bit more. But every person who walked in the door got a chip. So there was an audience favorite prize, but we actually had a judging component. So the judges picked the top 3 that got to participate in a 3-minute pitch.
Yeah, and when she says they shut down Fulton Street, like Fulton Street is like near Harrah's, and it's like a pretty popular street, and it really was like wall to wall with like NOEW stuff. Every bar, every restaurant you went into was like, oh, you're with NOEW? We have like $6 pitchers for you guys. Like or they had like $10 like meal combos and stuff like that. So it was awesome. And I, just to be completely frank, did not like realize the gravity of the event. Like whenever I think it was it November when we had the pitch competition here at the Venture Center, to get into, to become one of the Den Fellows, I was like, oh yeah, I won a pitch contest. Like, that's cool. Like, we'll go to New Orleans for a few days. And like, whenever I got down there, I was like, holy, like it was literally shut down wall to wall. I met like, the director of entrepreneurship and innovation for the Department of Commerce. Like those types of people were there just like mingling with, us peasants. It felt like, but no, and it was like the Den Showcase thing. Like, there was the judges that they had. It was like, John Burkhalter, anybody familiar with that name, ran for lieutenant governor. He was one of the judges. I met the New Orleans Saints doctor. I was meeting people. I was just telling Katie, that's why I leaned over to her. Met this guy from New York, and he was like, yeah, I saw you pitch. It was great. I know a guy at Stony Brook University. You want me to call him? And I'm like, sure. And I'm thinking, you know, he'll line up an email. Maybe in 2 weeks, we might get like a quick chat. This New Yorker literally picks up his phone.
Saw that phone call in the video.
That was the phone call. He picked him up and said, yeah, call the director of emergency medicine at Stony Brook University. And was like, hey, yeah, dislodgement, yada, yada, yada. Oh, are you looking for a beta site? And then like looks at me asking me, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Yeah. Like, but it was,
this is happening.
Yeah. And it was just like stuff like that, like continued to happen like all week. And I think something that like they, you know, doesn't need to be lost is like the attention that they show to the ESOs, which is like the people that make, you know, the wheels turn, like Jessica, Steve, Kim, like all of the people in the entrepreneurial communities that like really do hard work to like make this type of stuff possible. They're really supportive of them. And like a lot of the times those are kind of like unsung heroes. And I thought the DRA did a good job of like providing them not only assistance, but like making sure that they are like part of the curriculum, part of the program, like valued as they should be. So.
This was the second year I got to attend with the DRA, and I want to just commend the Delta Regional Authority for the work they're doing and the leadership they've kind of shown in the region. I really saw it really take effect this second year as the new ESOs and entrepreneurs came in, and it's really exciting to see what we can do going into the third year, because one of the things that was really impressive to me, and I haven't had a chance to share this with Katie or Spencer, but the pitch event that happened for the DEN compared to the NOEW big idea was just as impressive or more impressive. There weren't as many people at our event, but it was really well put together, and the quality of the pitches was right there. I would have been happy to have any investor in the country in that space. And so it's really great to see what's coming out of the Delta. And I want to also encourage all of you as members of this community, and we are connecting with other communities around, you know, Lafayette and Selma and these smaller communities, and how can we help them and how can we lift them up? And there's really neat things happening in the Delta, and we're going to see a lot of innovation happening. And I think that the South and the Delta specifically is really positioned to make an impact in what Steve Case calls the third wave of entrepreneurism and innovation in the country. And I think we're going to be a big player. And so it's really, I think, due in large part to the work that and the foundation that the DRA is laying for that, and the vision that Chairman Massengill has for what entrepreneurism can do for the area. So it's really exciting, and I encourage you all to continue to be a supporter and to invest in this ecosystem.
And take advantage of it too. I mean, like, honestly, I'm not going to be a DEN fellow next year, but I'm still going to go. I mean, like, it's not like there's just like massive areas that are quarantined off for people that aren't DEN fellows. Like, it was a really open environment. You know, case in point, has anybody ever lost themselves on Reddit for like 3 hours before, like online Reddit? So the co-founder of Reddit came and spoke, which was like awesome. He is hilarious. But he told a really good story about him and his friend had this idea, and they went to Y Combinator, like, you know, one of the first accelerators, and Y Combinator said, "This is garbage, but we like you guys, so we want you to come, but do something else. Like, we don't care what you do. Come here. We'll help you figure out what you're going to do." And that turned into Reddit. So it, you know, that was just cool. And then after he spoke, it was like literally walked into the crowd with everybody else, and it was like he was just like one of the people. Well, he eventually got like taken off in a black Escalade, but he was with us for a while. It was cool.
He was among us.
But I think that's why he was among us.
He walked among us.
That's why DRA has such a focus on, and I don't want to say a focus, but that's why we think that NOEW is really important, is because the caliber of people that they are bringing to this event, and the access that it provides for entrepreneurs and ESOs is unlike anywhere else in the country. I went to South by right before I left for NOEW, and South by, if you haven't been, is incredibly overwhelming and very distant, and it's very much like a conference, an incredible conference, but a conference nonetheless. And NOEW is really an experience and a celebration of entrepreneurship, and what DRA hopes is that we continue to bring high caliber entrepreneurs and high caliber ESOs to continue that celebration, and that we instill the things that happen at NOEW and some of those good practices what we say further up the river, and in Alabama. And so that celebration and that spirit of connecting community to entrepreneurs and connecting community to ESOs continues on, and we help build the ecosystem that way.
So question for you guys. What's the number one takeaway? What's the one thing that you've probably meditated on the most since Saturday, or throughout the course of the week, that you'll take away from this year's NOEW?
Something that I have been thinking about a lot, and this is something that we discussed with all the ESOs, is the importance of collaboration. I think that's sort of what the DRA is all about, and working together, using our resources as a region. And this is like the perfect platform to talk about that too, because that's what we do, is collaborate with each other and with the community. And we did talk about 1 million cups a lot there, and how that has made an impact on this community and how other regions should do the same thing. And we are connected with the entire nation at 1 million cups, which is awesome. But I think that we could always do a better job of that. Definitely use your resources as entrepreneurs, talk to us. We collaborate all the time. But that's something that, definitely get involved with the DRA if you're not, get to know Katie if you don't. But these are all resources that are available for you. The Innovation Hub, the Venture Center, definitely use and utilize those, because that's what we are here for, is to help.
I would say that we in the Mid-South, like the Delta region, we are not big enough not to. We are small, so we have to band together. That's a better way to say it. So, like, you'll talk about San Francisco, Boston, Chicago, all those different places. Like, we do not have the density, but like together we can reach that density. And I honestly think it's like a better type of density because it's so much more diverse. And that was apparent. But it's just the strategy of, like collaboration, working together. I thought that was apparent though. I mean, and it was very, it was competitive, but like everybody was like kind of on the same team in a way. It was like cheering each other on because you knew it didn't help to go against anybody else. So I would say that was the biggest takeaway, is like, we've got something really cool here in the Delta, and like with all the momentum, and it was just cool to see like, wow, like New Orleans has a booming entrepreneurial ecosystem. I had no idea. And you find out that's the case for like Birmingham and then all of these other places. So that's my big takeaway. What about you?
It was summer camp for startup junkies.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like, and I think you really described it best, Katie. It was really a celebration of that community and the region, and a little more background on the event. And Dan Lear in the back there can talk about this a little bit, because you're a Tulane guy.
Oh yeah.
So NOEW really emerged about 8 years ago as a group of MBA students and young startup entrepreneurs in New Orleans basically gave up their spring break and their summer to pull together an event in the interest of furthering the rebuilding of New Orleans post-Katrina. And so this became a focal point, a project for them to bring that community together to help benefit the city at large. It worked. They had 1,200 the first year, and they had, as Katie pointed out, about 14,000 this year. So we really experienced that and saw that. And the one thing that I kept thinking while I was there was, coming back to Little Rock, what kind of lessons can we learn from what they did to help bring that kind of community together? Honestly, I want to see 100 people in here on a minimum every morning, but there's a lot of effort that has to be put into programming and marketing in order to make that happen. But it all begins with the people that are in this room, and that's exactly what they did. They did a tremendous job of really bringing people together around an idea. And the value that that's represented to that local community and ultimately to the region is almost unquantifiable. I'm not kidding when I say I'm still, and I will be, I promise you, for weeks. My head is still there. I haven't left yet. And I can tell you this, I'll never miss it. And Katie can testify to this. My company produced that video. I have a media company, to contrast a little bit about what Spencer was saying with, he wasn't aware of how big of a deal it was. I was very much aware of how important it was because my business depends on it. And we didn't have a sponsor to send us there. So I was really scrapping to get there because I knew how important it was. That being said, I was still overwhelmed. Even understanding how important this was, even to my business, I could not take it all in. It was 3, 4, 5, I don't even know how many days it was. How many, like I said, I'm still there. It was utterly overwhelming. even in an emotional sense, to see people come together like that to collaborate. I was there with Spencer when Tall, the gentleman from New York, said, hey, let me call this guy in Stony Brook, and bang, it happened. I had an opportunity to meet Steve Case, the founder of AOL. His story is absolutely phenomenal, and to hear him tell it was really, really powerful. And I'm starting a media company. And so I asked Steve Case, can we connect? And he chats with me for a minute, like a peasant, right? But he makes me feel like a person. He makes me feel important. And then he says, let me introduce you to Herbie, who runs our Rise of the Rest program, which is very much aligned with what we do. So I connect with Herbie. These are the kind of opportunities, and I could literally go on for an hour with those types of connections that just happen one after another. If you're involved in startup entrepreneurship, if you have an idea, if you want to find out what do startup communities look like, I strongly encourage you to put this on your calendar for next year right now. Get a piggy bank, start putting change in it, whatever you need to do to get there. Don't miss this, because you're going to miss, maybe in my experience, the best opportunity to connect with a regional and even national community of entrepreneurs that are, unlike summer camp, actually going to write you when it's over. Yeah. They're going to call you. They're going to keep that promise. And they have, even as of yesterday, right? Started reaching back out to us. So it was absolutely invaluable. And I think I speak for everyone here.
And it was fun. We've been talking a lot about,
yes,
it was a lot of fun. Like assault on the liver fun. Like leprechauns, St. Patty's Day on bourbon fun.
I can't speak to that. So just a shameless, one of the things I'll get to that in a second, but one of the things I've really been thinking about is the reason I love NOEW so much personally is the access that it provides. It's that opportunity to meet a Steve Case or to meet a connection that can really be a tipping point for your company. And in the spirit of that, I think one of the big things that DRA will walk away from this year is how do we continue to expand that access? How are we making all of our communities and all of our ecosystems more accessible, especially to women and minority-owned businesses? How are we making capital more accessible? And we see that because we see how integrated NOEW has become in the New Orleans community in the day-to-day, and how they have created essentially what Tim Williamson calls rhythm and rituals, which is that the city has a cadence and they have a system of festivals. And how do we create our own rhythm and rituals, either here in Little Rock or in Jackson or Memphis, wherever you may be. But just a shameless plug. So for DRA purposes, the Delta Entrepreneurship Network applications will open back up in the fall, September. We will be taking a new round of entrepreneurs. So if you're an entrepreneur, I highly suggest you get with our lovely ESOs over here to talk about what it takes. And Spencer as well, you can provide really great insight into what it takes to be a company of that caliber of what we're looking for to come to New Orleans in this context. And then also, if you're an ESO or working for an ESO, this panel is a really great resource to talk about how you get involved. And if you're interested just in coming to NOEW, I'm happy to talk to you about what that looks like, what role you could play, how to best navigate it. I'm now a 2-year veteran, and it is still overwhelming. And there's still a lot of opportunity. And it's only going to get better as New Orleans moves into celebrating their tricentennial. NOEW's going to just be out of control next year. It's going to be great.
Any questions? Yeah, I was going to say we maybe can open for questions. I can bring the mic around.
You all haven't talked yet about the competitions and things, so we want to make sure we don't, forget about that because we got
the competitions.
Yeah.
Oh, so they did the Den Fellow. So the showcase.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and I'm glad you brought that up, Mike. So I was so proud just in general of the representation Arkansas had there. Tina McCord of Zinni Looning Tree pitched, Spencer Jones pitched, and then a company out of Memphis. And everyone did a great job. I mean, we were completely on par with everybody, obviously, and that was completely something that Katie and her team has enabled. They've mentored these people for a long time, and then now they're on this big stage. And Spencer won the whole thing and did an outstanding job. Yeah, and you can speak more to that too. But it was, I mean, I was personally really, really proud, and I mean, it's because of this community and the support we have.
I wanted to comment on that as well. Actually, when I was thinking about what I wanted to say this morning, last night, I thought of the very same thing, and I wanted to commend the Venture Center and the Delta Regional Authority for the programming that they've put together. And I think I probably speak for you. I think you, if I may, I think you would probably say you would not be where you are if not for the support of those organizations. And by the way, on that note, and this goes for Zuni Learning Tree and Sweet Bio and Memphis as well, so impressed with those guys and so proud of what they've accomplished. I don't know if you guys even fully understand the quality of the people that you have the opportunity and access to be around. And I got to see that firsthand this week. And funny story, I'm going to pick on you a little bit. When we got the invitation to the NOLA Bioinnovation Center, if I can say this. So Spencer raised $850,000 last year through a funding round. Congratulations to you. And then won the Den Fellowship. And so he's talking to the people at NOLA Bioinnovation, and he says, so we raised $850,000 last year. Well, it's $860 now because he won the $10,000 at the event. And I thought that was so funny.
Well, just like quickly, like echo what they said, and thank you. And totally. So I've probably done 9 pitches, like standing right here on this rectangle of carpet. And like that, like, and the feedback that you guys have given me, and like that is like why I was able to stand up there and feel comfortable like pitching my company. Like, it doesn't happen by accident. It's a product of the process that is like this ecosystem. Same thing. So the 2 Arkansas companies placed first and third. The other company that placed second was a fellow cohort company at 0 to 510, the accelerator I did at Memphis. Like, it is no surprise to me because it is a process that if you follow and you execute on, and you have the right team in place, like, you will be successful. Like biggest thing I'll echo, Arkansas really did like show extremely, extremely well. Like, one of the other companies that wasn't mentioned, Feather, who just reached a deal with Hayseed Ventures, and they're moving from Memphis to Fayetteville, like full relocated, changed their phone numbers. They are like bought into Arkansas. They showed well. Like, everybody was really impressed. So like Arkansas kind of stood up this past week and said,
it's going to have a reciprocal
here.
Effect too, right? That's going to bring attention to, wow, something's really happening in that community. When you take an event of that size and those companies represent so well, I think it's a clear indicator something different is happening in Arkansas and Memphis and that little corridor right there, that it isn't happening quite on the same level in other communities in the region. And not to take anything away, as I travel around the region a lot and I see a lot of really impressive communities, but there's definitely something unique happening here. And I was really proud of that. Just as Kim
real quickly. And if you're ever applying for anything, if you're doing a pitch, putting it together, like I said, I'm accessible. Like, you can talk to anybody at the Venture Center or anybody up here, and they'll get my contact info to you. If you need me, just grab me. I'm not around here as much as I used to be, but like, seriously, love helping out with that kind of stuff. Like, I don't care if it's a lean canvas or like a napkin drawing. I like helping. So.
Bring it, Mike.
Yeah. Sorry, Mike with Sparkable. I forgot to introduce myself. So this sounds a little bit like the old Startup America events, which, when we go to those, it'd be Steve Case and Brad Feld and all those guys showing up. They're basically just to help. But what I noticed, is, and it was on the website and on your thing, is there was a focus on hustle, right? And could you talk a little bit about, how they were embracing hustle? Because that's the thing that I think we need here, maybe more than anything else, is this mentality, around that.
Yeah, so the theme this year was All Hail the Hustle, which is a nod to Mardi Gras and their crews, and All Hail Iris or All Hail Bacchus or whatever Mardi Gras crew you were in. And I think a lot of the hustle aspect happened post-Katrina. And when you hear Tim Williamson talk about the struggle to rebuild New Orleans, him creating the Idea Village was a very selfish act, and he'll be the first to tell you that it was a desperate attempt to get his children to come home and to build a place where his children wanted to move back to. And I think when you have that something that emotional driving you, the hustle is natural. And I see it with companies and support organizations that are doing really well, is when you have that level of emotional connectivity to what you're doing and that passion for what you're doing, the hustle comes. And so I think in order for us to establish a level of hustle similar to what New Orleans is seeing here in Little Rock, or even in the greater state of Arkansas, what it's going to take is all of us bringing together people who are passionate about this state. They don't have to be passionate about entrepreneurship, but they need to be passionate about Arkansas. And and then us as a collective can work together to make this because it takes all kinds of to break down barriers and create an ecosystem that's really, really welcoming. And until we have that, until we have it where anybody can walk off the street and feel like they're welcome and can learn about entrepreneurship at the Hub or at the Venture Center or at the Delta Center in Jonesboro or Hayseed, that's what we're striving for.
I thought it was important for like the entrepreneurs too, because you're totally right. Like that mindset, like I just talked about the process. So if we have the process in place, like what's the X factor is like the hustle, right? To get them in here, to get them to go through the process. And like, there's not there's some like startup cleavage, as I like to call it, where it's like fun stuff. It's attractive. It's like, ooh, startup-y, like Silicon Valley crap. But then like 99% of startup stuff is not glitz and glammy. And it's like, like nose to the grindstone. Your friends aren't sure what you're doing. You don't have time to hang out because you got to travel to some conference. And like, I think it was just like a reminder that like, look, like we see you hustling, we value it, like all hail the hustle. Yeah. So like, it kind of gives you that. It was kind of like a coming together of like, hey, we've all been like doing this and it is lonely sometimes, but like, look, it's valuable. Like we should keep doing it.
And that's why we should celebrate it, is celebrate the fact that entrepreneurship and doing what Jessica and Steve and Kim do is not, and what I do is not pretty. And there's a lot, I mean, it's not like, let's just call a spade. It's not.
It's like making a hamburger.
Yeah.
Everybody likes it.
But at the end of it, it's when it's easy to get bogged down in the journey. And I think that's true for entrepreneurs as well. And not because there aren't always that big event and exits are not always the Facebooks. And so it's important that we take time and do things like 1 million cups and do things like demo days and say, the hustle is real and it takes all of us, and we should all be invested in this because the small business and entrepreneurship is the driver of Arkansas's economy, and we cannot have a healthy Arkansas economy if we do not have healthy small businesses and healthy entrepreneurs.
There was one guy that I kept seeing. So to kind of give you the landscape, I don't know how well the video displayed this. It was impossible to cram all of that into 3 minutes, that whole experience. But it takes place on about a 3-block area. Yeah. Is that right? It's all in one place. And so you're kind of moving around this area throughout the week. And I kept seeing this one guy over and over and over and over again. And every time I saw that guy, he was pitching to somebody. Every single time I saw that. And I saw him a lot. And every time I saw him, he was pitching to somebody. And you could just see it on his face. He didn't look desperate. He didn't look frustrated. But he was very intent. He was very serious. And I thought, all hail the hustle. Yeah. That guy gets it, right? And then I looked around. I was like, hey, there's another guy doing the same thing. And there's another guy, and this girl over here, every time I see her, she's got something going on. And you keep seeing the same people over and over again. And it's in this we use the word overwhelming probably a bit liberally, because it's actually a pretty relaxing environment. You kind of feel like you're almost at a startup resort. But there's a lot of activity, but it doesn't feel rushed. But there's a lot of, pardon the phrase, hustle and bustle. But you keep seeing these people, here and there, and they're doing their thing. And then you immediately reflect back and you go, it's the last year of me doing that over and over again.
Sorry, I'm going to be really rude. I have to leave, but I want to give everybody my email in case you want to get in touch with me. I will be happy to answer any questions you have about the DEN. It's K Milligan, MILLIGAN, at DRA, D as in Delta, RA.gov.gov. And just for kicks, here's my number. It's 662-313-1606. And I'd be happy to talk with you. I'm back in the office next week. And so I'm happy to talk with you about anything DEN, more about what DRA does, how we support entrepreneurs, And thank you for listening to all of us talk about NOE.
Before you leave, a personal thank you. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for
personal
helping us
thank
do what we
you,
did.
for sure.
And I want to speak for this community as well. Thank you so much for everything that Delta Regional Authority does.
Agreed.
So much of this is not possible without you.
Agreed. Get out of here. Take care. But one thing too is all hail the hustle. Like I feel like people are trying to make starting a business and entrepreneurship cool again. Like, and I don't know if any of you seen, and I think it's working too. Stuff like this. Has anyone seen the new Audi commercial? It's for like the new Audi A4.
Smart is the new rock and roll.
Yeah, and he's like, intelligence is the new this. Smart is the new this.
Intelligence
And he's
is
like,
the new rock and roll.
see you guys.
Spencer, see you, man.
See you, Spencer. And it talks about like like a whole commercial is built around basically like the startup culture being cool, and they want those cool people to drive Audis because it's intelligent. And like the first time I saw that commercial, I was just like, it's finally cool. Like it's finally cool. But I don't know.
So, and I was going to comment on that as well, because there's a lot of talk about the startup culture, and that is incredibly valuable. It really is true. But another observation that I took away from that, very few hoodies, lots of suits. I saw a lot of very serious business people. My age, I'm 40 and older. It wasn't a bunch of 24. No offense to anyone who's 24. I was 24 once, believe it or not. Not a lot of 24-year-olds or teenagers. It was very serious-minded business people who understand at the nuts and bolts level entrepreneurship, who had a lot of valuable experience to contribute. So anyone, and particularly to anyone that's watching on the live feed, if you are under the impression that that cool startup culture thing is a young youth fad, it's a Bernie Sanders revolution kind of thing, I'm sorry, you've completely misread the tea leaves. This is about business at large. This is where those big businesses that we think about come from. They were startups once. There's a place for everyone with an idea in the startup community. It's not divided by race. It's not divided by gender. It's not divided by socioeconomic standing. It's divided by the quality of your idea. It's really, if there's a division, that's it. But the cool thing about it is that the value of your idea is going to improve by immersing it in the community and helping them work with you on that idea to bring it to life. It's maybe the greatest barrier destroyer in our country. So I encourage you, whatever your preconceptions are about startup communities, come to events like NOE, come to 1 Million Cups at the Venture Center, get involved in that community, and maybe it'll be an eye-opener.
I think we're about ready to wrap it up, unless anyone has one last burning question they need to ask.
Stroud merger match. You guys are talking about the startup culture and the cool factor. And we went to South by last weekend, just before you guys were at NOE, and met this young gentleman over a number of beers. And he was from Silicon Valley. He had all the cool swag and all the matching t-shirts and hats and, you know, expensive handouts. Some dude. He might have been 24, maybe. And we engaged him in a conversation about his startup, and he had raised a ton of money, lots of zeros. And we asked him how he monetized his product, because we just didn't get the value of what he was doing. I thought I just didn't understand it. And he said, that's not the right question to ask. He says, we're not charging for it. We have no idea how we're going to make money for it. And that's really bothered me ever since then, because I feel that he and a lot of people in his culture got wrapped up in the cool, and they're not building solid businesses. And as you might imagine, I have a real bee in my bonnet about people building solid businesses. So I guess my comment was, embrace the hustle, but let's all be sure that we're building something that's going to last and not flame out.
Yeah, I think part of the reason that a lot of the people, and that's more common in the tech industry, because believe it or not, Uber is operating at a loss. Like some of the biggest, Snapchat operating at a loss. Like some of these massive
Facebook
unicorn
for a long time.
Yeah, some of the Amazon, I don't think they may be profitable now, but like they see that happening with them, and they think, oh, all I have to do is get users. I get 5,000 users. We'll figure out how to monetize it, right? Like that's kind of what Snapchat. So like they're trying to be unicorns, and not everybody's a unicorn. There's nothing wrong with being a thoroughbred Clydesdale. You know what I mean? But I think that's why they get away with it, because they think, oh, I can do that too. We can get there, and we don't have to monetize it. We'll just get users and then exit, which is stupid. But
so I know I've talked a lot, but I have a thought on this, and I took it from a guy that started. He's actually from New Orleans, and he was on a panel with Trey Fayard, who's the CEO of Glow Airlines in New Orleans, and two other guys. He has a company called Dinner Club in New Orleans. Should look it up. And they are doing, I think, somewhere around 10 million revenue. And the panel was about fundraising, and they'd all raised capital different ways to start their business. And they talked a lot about bootstrapping. And he said, I've never understood why we celebrate when someone raises a seed round or a Series A. I've never understood why we celebrate when someone sells equity in their company. I've never understood that. He said, why don't we celebrate when people get a bank loan? That's a lot harder to do than to go get money from an investor. And you didn't have to give up part of your business and control. And I saw a thing from Paul Singh last night, and he said, raising money means now that the scope of what you can build with your company is limited. Because you're giving control over to someone else. And that's so much of what's happening in the Valley. I think the contrast in what's happening there, and when we think about this as in terms of the marathon instead of the sprint, the stallion instead of the unicorn, is that the way that we're building businesses, and I saw this firsthand again this week, is that we really are getting down to the brass tacks of what's going to make an actual successful business, not simply how do you go out and raise money because you said you had a website. And I think businesses like LineGuard Med are doing that they're following a smart process. And again, that's credit to organizations like Delta Regional Authority and the Venture Center, StartCo in Memphis, and so many of these other organizations in the region that are taking a completely different approach to the way that we build businesses, and the intelligence is the new rock and roll way.
yeah, I'd push back on the raising money thing, because I gave up a ton of control whenever I raised money, but I gave it up to people way smarter than me.
Smart money.
I mean, yeah, I gave up a piece of the company and gave up control, but like, would you rather have a slice of watermelon or a whole grape? I mean, which is more sustenance for you? So
That's I think the big focus, like Elise said, is go get customers. That's the bottom line. There was a VC that stopped in from Boulder yesterday, just off the street. I didn't find out he was a VC, very successful capitalist for the last 30 years, was in town for something and just stopped by, and we were talking, and he's like, yeah, customers. So we kind of wrap up this 1 million cups every week with what can you do for the entrepreneur. In this case, I want to kind of turn it around and give a challenge to our community, since a lot of the faces, you all have been here before, most of us. And one thing that is, Steve Case talked at NOEW about the third wave, and he has a book coming out that explains this third wave that he believes we're going into. And we're poised to be the front leading edge of that wave if we choose to. And so I really want to challenge all of us. And if you Google on Forbes, his wife wrote an op-ed in the last few days about this. There is a huge disparity between the money that's invested in, for example, female minority-owned companies and male-owned companies. And there's an opportunity that lies right here in the center of Arkansas. We saw on the DEN stage 1 male present and 2 female, and that is not the norm, but we need more of that. So as you're out in the community, bring in friends, bring in, the more people we have at the table, the more perspective we have, the richer companies we produce, because those people who are on our boards, who are at our advisors, the people who are our co-founders, don't just have the same perspective as the CEO or whoever is running the company. So that's kind of my challenge, is as we continue in the next few years, you guys have an accelerator running, we have one, and we're going to be bringing in new companies to Little Rock. As we assimilate these people into our community, let's look at how we can engage more and more of our community that's already right here, because there's a whole, it's kind of the old adage of there's acres of diamonds right here in our backyard. So that's kind of the challenge. always be thinking, how can we mine the diamonds that are right here?
It's not investing in women and minority companies is not the right thing to do, and that's not why it is the right thing to do, but that's not why we should do it. It's the smart thing to do, and that's why we should do it.
So anyway,
Yeah, Gary Vaynerchuk said, don't do it the way I did it. Don't do it the way Zucks did it. Do it the way that you do it. And we don't have to do things the way the Silicon Valley did them. Let's do them the way Little Rock. Let's do it the way Little Rock would do it. Let's do it the way that Arkansas would do it, that the region would do it. And let's do it the smart way. And I think you have some great examples here to follow. So
thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone for coming out.
Thanks for stick around. Co-work Wednesday today.
All
if you'd
hail the
like to
hustle.
work. And stick around, have some more coffee and visit.